everybody. We've got a cool panel, and I hear that we are, I'm Steve Clemons, by the way, with The Atlantic. I hear we're sort of the balance to the completely female panel that was earlier in the day, and they had to even out things and bring us up here. But just because I want to have things, I have two honorary members of the panel that I'm going to call on regularly. Karen, stand up. Oh, no, Karen, stand up for a minute. Just stand up. She's what we call an active lurker. She won't tell me for whom she works, but she's in economic development, and she's rather interesting. So we're going to go back to Karen. And Trenae with the Robert Woods Johnson Foundation does global innovation, global health. Just stand up for a minute, tell everybody who you are, because we now have six people on our panel. So I'm going to go back to Karen and Trenae now and then. I just feel better about all that. I think one of the conversation, this question, it's really about not just the future of wealth, but the future of work on a whole variety of fronts, and what's happening with automation, what is happening with artificial intelligence, where is technology taking us. And I guess, you know, we have a group of practitioners who think deeply about this. And Bill, I'd like to just start with you for a minute and ask this question of whether you, as an economist for the AFL-CIO, the chief economist, are worried about the future of people in this economic equation we have. Do human beings have a place 20 years from now when we have all sorts of sensors and applications and the Internet of everything? Are we all in that picture?
Well, we are. What I think isn't in the picture is, you know, a balanced look at economics. The bigger problem we face is we're never going to get to this world that these technologists think. The gap between productivity and wages continues to grow. And the problem with that is all of these things they imagine can't happen if wages don't get back to growing with productivity. So, you know, people say, oh, look, we're going to replace truck drivers. That's a whole industry. We're going to get rid of all these workers. You drive a truck to deliver goods that people bought.
So you're saying the demand falls out?
The demand falls out. I'm not going to be on Amazon if I'm unemployed. And at some point, this is not sustainable. What made it possible for a far greater revolution in productivity and automation was that eventually we understood that, and we had wages rise with productivity. We put wages back into the equation. So we could get rid of the Iceman because consumers had enough money to buy refrigerators. We could get rid of Teamsters because we raised the wages of truck drivers. So these transformations in technology that have taken place, that have gotten rid of whole sets of skills and workers, have taken place because we used to understand wages must go with productivity. They create their own demand, right. and they therefore sustain themselves. If wages don't go up, there are no customers. And if there are no customers, in the current setting, we're able to make some gains because some of this technology is so cheap that we can replace some things we used to do in interpersonal space. But in product space, in real economy, hard space,
so I get,
it's impossible without customers.
I don't mean to interrupt, but I get everything you're saying. I don't know if any of you, there's a small town on the Eastern Shore called Chestertown, Maryland. If any of you get a chance there, who's from Chestertown? There's a cool Grand Army of the Republic. It was African American Soldiers Clubhouse that served in the Civil War. It's one of the last bits. And they have a cool exhibit right there from the Smithsonian Institution called The Way We Worked. And it was people that kind of looked at all the classes of people you just described in the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, and it was, you know, fascinating to kind of look at all of these things that people did to earn wages, join the middle class, and they're all wiped out. All of those jobs are wiped out. And I'm interested, what you just said is that the system can't continue the way it is, but yet I don't see anything fixing the system. I see the divergence getting worse and worse. So what makes you, I mean, are we just waiting for the shock to come? Algernon?
Yeah, so I agree fundamentally with everything that Bill has said.
I'm so disappointed.
No, wait a minute. We do have a stronger economy when we don't have that divide between wages and productivity. We have, yes, a much healthier economy. It's better for everyone. However, I think before the system reaches a sort of a crisis or critical stage, I think there's a lot of way to go. So, for example, we've seen, stagnated wages for decades, and we've seen a declining labor force participation for men. I do think that some of the lack of demand in the U.S., we can sell in China, we can sell in India. So I do think that unfortunately there's already pain today, and unfortunately we may have like another 30 years of pain before it reaches that critical point. And I don't think we want another 30 years of pain before there's a change.
So I think the technologists have to understand that, because if they want the world they envision,
Right.
they have to be part of the solution that Algernon is envisioning.
Wilson, are you part of the solution? This is Google. I don't know if you're friend or foe to this.
I actually, whenever you have technologists and economists agreeing on a point, then it must be the right point. And I will say,
when you join Google, do you have to become pro-technology and all that? Like you have to, drink
I don't
the
think so.
Kool-Aid?
I think if Google only brought in pro-technology people, then we'll have a blind spot to a lot of these issues. So I think having a healthy dose of perspective helps us get to the right point. But one of the things I think the economists are saying, I think that actually bodes well for this conversation, is that there is a gap. There's a productivity gap, and there is a nexus between, or a correlation between, productivity and wages. And I think that's where technology, as you said, Bill, can help. There's certain tasks that will be automated. It's just easier for machines to do those. And that can encourage efficiencies, and that can help us get to a place where we're more productive and wages can go up. So I do think that technology and just the underlying fundamental economics can go hand in hand with this.
So tell us where he's wrong.
Well, because they haven't. I mean,
Yeah.
we've had 30 years where there have been unbelievable technological progress and productivity has gained. And so I had wanted to have a slide, but
Yeah,
I didn't.
I had one too.
the level graph that looks like this.
Shadow puppets.
So starting in 1980, this is productivity,
Right.
this is wages. And that gap continues to grow. And because that gap continues to grow, this is not at all sustainable. So we've already done one experiment in the 1990s. We got rid of secretaries. If you go to a federal office today in Washington, support staff are minuscule. One of the ways in which President Clinton reduced the federal workforce, one of the ways was he got rid of support staff. And all that was done because of word processing, Outlook. Sorry, that's one of your competitors, but
They're okay with it.
But that meant that those functions of maintaining schedules and producing documents could be.
Donald Trump seems to be getting rid of people no matter where they are, right? It's just,
Well, yes, but
that hiring freeze.
he's trying to get rid of people who are actually productive and working. He wants to kick them out of the country. So that's a deeper dimension and discussion. But here in Washington, that meant, in particular, African American women, because overwhelmingly the support staff that were replaced by word processing and scheduling software, and in part by the internet. You didn't have to make requests. You could use a PDF. You didn't need someone to fax a document for you. All of those functions replaced thousands of African American women. Fortunately, in the 90s, we ran an economy that was very near full employment, not at full employment, but close enough to have wages start to rise with productivity. And so we were able to make that transition out of a very old technology to a new technology. And today, if you walk in a federal office, you can't find a typewriter.
Right.
There may be one in some closet in some basement somewhere.
You get that urge when you see one, right?
Yes, like to almost like grab it. But we should understand that we got rid of an occupation already, but that was successfully done with an environment where for a brief moment we had rising wages and we ran at full employment. But if wages don't get back to that path, if we don't understand there's going to have to be a catch-up, that profit rates can't be what they currently are, they are not sustainable, until industry understands that, then we can't get all of this wonderful stuff that technology can unleash and make our lives better.
So let me come back to Wilson and Daniel, both of you. So we've heard the articulation of this challenge and problem, these gaps, productivity gap. I had the opportunity with Maya Rockymore the other night to hear about some work and research that's been done that looks at the impact of, say, driverless cars in the future in the trucking industry across millions of people without degrees. These are the sort of lesser educated parts of the workforce, but an important part of the workforce. And you can look a lot across other sectors. And Wilson, you just made the comment that you thought technology could come in as a partner and help in these issues. And I'm just wondering, because I've asked my question, what do you do with people who are so profoundly displaced in that social equation? How can we get that right? What are the sectors that ought to be scrambling for the hills right now and worried? So, Daniel, Wilson,
well,
what do you
I'll
think?
jump in.
Yeah.
I'll jump in on that. I think the first, the starting point should be to recognize that while this topic is hot right now and it's an issue that people are actively debating, we're not going to be in a scenario where the robots are like a meteor striking the earth and there's this event and all of these jobs are going to be gone. That's not going to happen. I mean, there's some people that
It's gonna eat the jobs
say
slowly.
that it's not going to happen, but
I don't know
over
whether
time,
that makes them feel better.
for the past several centuries, humans have existed alongside technological innovations, and we found a way to make good decisions from a political
Those
standpoint.
centuries were very slow-moving
Slow-moving.
centuries. Google's made everything fast
Slow
now,
moving,
right?
but we are a participant in that progress, and we always have been. My guess is that we will be because of some of these mitigating factors like the underlying economic principles. But I think the point that, Bill, you made about the secretaries and the disproportionate impact on African American women, I think for people of color who are now hearing this debate, for us to now recognize that that can happen again. And to get involved in the debate, be at the table in this debate, and to ensure that as decisions are being made on how this technology is deployed, because we as humans make that decision. We at Google, we can build a technology, but as a society, we decide how that technology will be deployed, where, when, how fast. Technology doesn't make those decisions. We as humans make those decisions. And our community should make sure that we're at the table. It's happening right now. The conversation is happening to make those decisions.
Do we have mics in the audience? Daniel, I promise to get you next. But
I appreciate it.
Do we have mics out
she
there?
has a mic.
So you've got a mic. Does Karen have a mic? Oh, you're sharing. Okay. So Trinae, you have. So I just want to ask you real quickly before I bring our good friend Daniel in this conversation. As you look out in your world, I mean, I'm not asking you to ask questions. I just want to know from you, when you look at the communities you're dealing with, innovation and health, what do you see happening in those sectors with technology and hitting? Do you feel the displacement, or do you feel that there are more opportunities coming on for particularly communities that have been that are under-resourced, that have bigger challenges? Well, just give us a quick snapshot of what you see.
I definitely think there's displacement. I mean, what's going on in tech is going on in health tech, and I think one of the things.
So who's losing out?
I'm historically disadvantaged and enfranchised communities. I mean, I think the reality is that the reason that this conversation is part of this like national discussion is folks are really starting to see that across all sectors, tech is something that's taking over, and you're seeing folks who are doing work. I mean, I'm in the foundation space, and I think foundations and other kind of more traditional folks in nonprofit spaces and government.
She's saying that she has money, folks. She can
No.
help. Yeah, so go
I
ahead,
have
right.
no money.
Sorry.
I mean, I think even in this space, we're feeling that folks are looking towards social enterprise and looking to for-profit institutions, and they've always been at the leading edge of kind of what's driving change. And so if folks who are in tech are at that leading edge, but folks in communities who are historically left out of the equation are not part of the folks who are at the table in tech making those decisions, it's hitting all sectors. And the reality is that we're seeing it in health, we're seeing it, in all the spaces I work in.
Thank you. We'll give Karen a break, and then we'll get the microphone over. But Daniel, you're a graduate of Singularity University. It's a super cool thing. And for those who don't know, this is Sebastian Thrun's outfit?
No,
or different?
Peter Diamandis and Ray Kurzweil.
Okay, well, Ray Kurzweil. So you're already you're a futurist, you're living way beyond the challenge. So help us out, help us understand how we may bridge some of these gaps of people, because it seems to me that there are people like yourself who've been able to take part in this kind of super turbocharged, fascinating, turbulent world, and there are a lot of other people that aren't. And a lot of other people just simply, when it looks to their livelihood and being, parts of civil society and a healthy middle class, that is just, the data show it's clearly eroding. And so from your perspective, do you have any kind of silver bullets to fix the problem?
No, and that's exactly the issue.
You don't have any, so why are you on this panel?
Because I'm here to be, I think I'm here to be the voice of reason. You got to realize, this is not a question of social policy or political economy. This is market forces and algorithms and machine learning and innovation that's happening around the world. It's not
Say it
just the
again,
United States.
algorithms, machine learning.
Artificial intelligence.
Artificial intelligence, none of that involves people.
It's people building tools.
People building.
Right.
These tools are leverageable by people, right? AI is an extension of our own reasoning and cognitive abilities. We can be augmented by these tools. We can leverage them to our own benefit. That's where social policy comes into play. So we predict and forecast and develop cushioning and mediation.
So have you seen this report and this study about AI and self-learning machines and others that have been fed data coming out with the biases and the racism and the bigotry?
Right, because it's in the data that it's collecting, right?
So why are you comfortable with that?
No one's comfortable with it. Look, these are baby steps for a turn of events in technological history that's going to transform our civilization, right? This is not a simple change. This is just disruption on the scale of inventing language, right? So we have no way to predict where this is going to end up. The idea that we're going to swoop in and somehow shift some pieces on the board and make everything like it was in the 19th or 20th centuries is impossible.
I get that, but what do you do with the, is Maya Rockymore here? How many drivers are going to lose their job as a result of self-driving cars? You threw that at a dinner and it blew me away.
So if there is a rapid transition, and what Wilson said about how it gets deployed matters, but what we modeled was a scenario where there was a rapid transition to level 5 technology. Level 5 technology is the kind that does not require any human beings to be in a vehicle.
Right.
4.1 million driving jobs, professional driving jobs, could be at risk in the United States.
So at that level, I mean, I'm hearing you basically say, well, society just has to suck it up. Too bad.
Not at all. No, I'm saying the kinds of solutions we've had in the past to deal with this, whether at the economic level or the policy level, won't fit this problem. So we need to invent new solutions. Right. And that discussion is not happening, at the federal level or even at most of the municipal levels.
Well, we need to be in that.
I have to intervene again. I mean, but at the market-driven level, you can't get there because people have to have income to demand whatever it is the robot is doing.
That's right, yeah.
So whether it's a robot doing it or a human doing it, if they're producing a product or a service, somebody has to pay for it. And the current path we are on, it can't happen. It cannot happen because there's no money for it. And so there are wonderful innovations which could take place, but they won't. The second part of the problem is at this level of inequality. So I talked about the secretaries being replaced. However, this means that 2 women are now doing the work in many offices that used to be done by 12 or 15. So are their wages 7 times greater?
No.
No. It all gets sucked up into, we got to pay Microsoft more money, or we have to pay this software company more money. But nobody goes, okay, but the human being who's doing the work is doing the work of 7 people, but they're not getting 7 times the wage. That's the core problem.
So but there are also new jobs that are different jobs created.
No, but when you have rising wages, the other jobs do create it.
Bill, why?
So it's not just that the iceman loses his job when the refrigerator comes, but I need a refrigerator repairman.
So, Bill, I get your logic, and I understand where you're coming from. What I don't understand is why the AFL-CIO is so small or shrinking, or why that logic isn't catching like wildfire. Why is what you just said selling so poorly out to kind of the mass public in terms of saying, hey, we need to go out and address some of these issues more broadly? And why is that? And I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I understand the logic of exactly where you're at. But what the truth is, Google is ascending and labor unions are declining. But you're saying there's this massive issue out there, and are people irrational? Is that what's going on?
No, they're fighting like hell. So workers in Mississippi are fighting like hell to get unionized. What they are facing is this other element, which is that the political capture of the system by those who have the money and determine that that secretary won't get a 7-time pay increase for being 7 times more productive are the same people who are keeping people in Mississippi who want to be part of the United Auto Workers from being able to be part of the United Auto Workers. We had the governor of Tennessee intervene in an election at the Volkswagen plant, and the senator from Tennessee intervened into a Democratic election of the worker at the Volkswagen plant to say no. And in fact, we will punish Volkswagen if these workers agree to be unionized. Even though Volkswagen, which is a unionized company in its home country and has union members on its board, said, we don't have a problem with unions. It's not our problem. They were told in America, you are from Germany, you came to America. We don't do this in America. Americans don't have the right to form a union. Get it straight. Go back to Germany if you think differently, because we will take every state subsidy that we can think of in Tennessee and take it away from you if you let your workers get organized. So this is the kind of fight that American people have to get democracy at the workplace so we can get wages to coincide with productivity, and all these things are possible. We are at an age where these things are possible.
Yeah, I know you're chomping at the bit. I can hear the grinding. Go ahead.
So that's a key point that Bill raises, but I think I'm a little more pessimistic than Bill, because I do feel I do feel that, like I said before, I don't think that autonomous vehicles will, as Wilson said, with the, if there's with the loss of jobs, new jobs are also created. So the net change will probably not be 4 million. But I do feel like the American economy can survive with 4 million fewer workers. So I do worry about that pain, at least in the short term. And I think it's something that we should all be worried, because as was said before, the people who are going to feel the pain are the most disadvantaged people. With driving jobs, we're looking at black men. The group that already has the highest unemployment rate is the group that's most at risk from autonomous vehicles. So we should be worried about that. But really, the other point, let me just say, Wilson's also correct, and Bill touched on this, it's policy and politics, right? Right, so policy can manage this, right? We can have effective policies to help people transition to jobs, to see how we roll these jobs out, to compensate people well. But our political system, and I work for Demos, and we are very concerned about money in politics, because our political system has been hijacked by the 1%, essentially. And the technology is created and serves the interests of the 1%, and the policy realm is also captured by the 1%. So this is a really tight, difficult situation, and unfortunately, that's why I'm a little bit pessimistic. But that's why we need, Congressman Meek was encouraging Ben Jealous to run, as well as other people to run for office, and that is absolutely correct. We need people to get involved, run for office, because the policies that we need to enact won't happen with the current governors that we have in the states that you mentioned. So we need political change to manage the transition in the economy.
Well, for the audience reason, I think it happened accidentally that Daniel and Wilson are modernists. We're over here, and Algernon and Bill were over here. The clingers to the past, etc. No, but I mean, actually, I think there's a better bridge here. You know, I am actually, I agree with so much of what both of you just laid out. I worry so much about the trends. I worry about the ability of society to shrug off those that have been left behind and think they can kind of create you know, tubes that run past them without concern, et cetera. What I worry about, I completely understand the ethics of unions, but I worry the fact that the workplace has just changed. You have a lot more people, the gig economy, people that are going to be self-employed, you know, running around in different ways and affected by the opportunities that the platforms that they have and broadband and just the connectivity where people can navigate this in a very, very different structure and way than they did in the past. But here's what I am frustrated about in this conversation, which I think is a bit of a fake debate. We pretend that everyone's equal to some degree in the jobs discussion. We pretend that everybody gets this fair shake. I happen to have a colleague, Ta-Nehisi Coates, at The Atlantic, who's written passionately and beautifully and you know, in a highly depressing way about how that's just not true in a society, not true in our society in particular with the racism and bigotry. And I've worked a lot on issues of incarceration and others. And I've just wondered, when you kind of look broadly at that issue, isn't it also a question that if we were to look at talent on the table that we're leaving on the table, because you don't have an economy, you have a winner-takes-all trend, and you have human resource departments that don't want to take risks on people that have had, you know, some speed bump in their lives. And I'm always interested in whether it's always just a discussion between classic labor and, you know, technology transitions, whether or not we actually need to get more deeply into the question of the fact that we could make this a lot healthier if we created a second chance economy, that we got people that had been, you know, in prison, retrain them. Jim McKelvey of Launch Code trains people in coding, and he couldn't get them jobs. And he began calling people like John Chambers of Cisco, this is a famous guy who invented the company Square with Jack Dorsey, and began saying, your HR department sucks because they're not taking a chance on any of these people who have world-class skills, but they have some blip in their background, and began shaming them to try and... So I'm just interested in, you know, modern guys, why isn't your world solving this second chance economy problem of talent on the table?
I don't know if Google wants to handle this first, because my view is basically that the problems are more substantial than that. Like, it doesn't matter so much where you stand in the social hierarchy of society, everyone is going to be struggling. You know, the reality of things is that this is more akin to what happened with farming. You know, in 1850, 70% of the workforce in the United States were farmers. In 1900, it was 40%. Now it's 2%. And that's what we're facing with rudimentary labor. As AI and robotics really kick in, we won't need a labor force that doesn't think or create.
But people could go to school, they could have them, and the economy was robust enough to absorb them in other ways.
Right.
If everything is automated, that seems to be less of an...
Well, I mean, you're starting from a premise that that's all going to happen. Everything's going to be automated.
Have you watched how fast Google has taken over everything?
Google feels like it's a young company, but it's actually a 20-year-old company. That's 2 decades. It feels fast, but if we really, you know, pull back from the alarmism and really look at what's happened, it's 2 decades to get where Google is today. If you look at all the stats, I think the Bureau of Labor Statistics has the stat that 70% of all the jobs in the U.S., going back from like 1970, is created by small businesses. Mm-hmm. So what that equates to in today's terms is entrepreneurship, to Daniel's point, creators. And if you look at things like, I'm out in the Valley, venture capital, a lot of these big venture capital firms, they're funded by these huge pension funds. The pension funds invest in the venture capital funds who then invest in founders. Now, those pension funds are funded by people who largely look like the people in this room, the firefighters, the teachers, the everyday workers. They're funding those pension funds, but the people who are making the decisions about where those pension funds are going aren't making decisions that are in the best interest of the people who are funding them. And so one of the things that we need to do is to look at the full debate here, not just get caught up in the robots versus jobs thing, and really look at the future of work. So 36 years ago, my dad was working at a lumber mill doing very manual labor. In fact, I think his title was laborer. That was the title. Mm-hmm. And if he could see into the future and see 36 years from now, I'm going to have a son, and he's going to get a job. He's going to have a job. He's going to get paid a lot of money, and his job will consist of him going into an office. That son is big. His
Just wanna
job,
clarify.
his job, what work meant for this son 36 years from now, will be to go into an office that's air conditioned, very nice and comfortable, sit down in a chair, stare at some machine for 5-6 hours a day, and go home and get paid a lot of money to do that. Like that concept would have confounded him, that would be work. Similarly, what we think of work today, and we're trying to create policies anchored in what today looks like, we really need to think about the future of work and what work will look like 2 decades from now, 3 decades from now, and start to put things in place so that people of color, people who have historically been left out of this conversation, we're there when we get there 30 years from now. And I think that's where our debate really has to happen.
Wilson, it sounds like
but-
you've got keys to the castle. What Bill is saying is that air conditioning and the fancy desk and the nice view and the
And a lot of money.
and the what?
A lot of money.
A lot of money.
Compared to what he was
you get
making.
all that. That you get all that. That what he's saying is that
already married.
we're going over the cliff because the people who are out there in the system sustaining that have to be able to consume, have to buy, have to be engaged. And he's saying that is. I heard you very clearly.
That's the wages. That's the wages
there's-
point you're making.
but there's another issue here, and it's not the second chance, it's the first chance.
All right.
So everyone saw Hidden Figures, right? In this room. If you haven't, then don't raise your hand.
Just go see it.
Honestly, who didn't see that? Anybody not see that?
Okay.
Go
there's
see
one.
that
It's
now.
on Netflix and it's on demand. So
You know, I
so
had
see
in
it.
Chicago on a future work forum the young lady who wrote the book, and her grandmother was one of these women. Unbelievable story, and I'm just so grateful to her. She wrote that book. So speaking for women who are bringing great ideas to the table. So
But that's important because you see, so often we do these conversations as if African Americans didn't create this technology.
yeah,
So the truth of the matter is 10% of the people in the United States who have the qualifications
Right.
to be computer scientists, computer programmers, systems
we're
engineers
pushed aside
are
at this
African
point,
Americans.
yeah.
Are African Americans. We're 10% of the population. We're 10% of the people with that skill. If you go here in we call it the DMV, but the District, Maryland, Virginia,
right.
a high-tech sector as big as Silicon Valley, because we're the home of the internet. It was invented here. The first way that you used to get, how do I get my URL, was through a company that was a black company, because the SBA gave them the contract, so you had to register through a black company to get on the internet. This happened in the 1990s. The first PlayStation kind of game, that was invented by a black man. So here in the DMV, 20-some%, it's about 22% of the people with those skills are black. Working on cybersecurity, working on the internet, working on all the things that happen in high-tech space in the DMV, a sector as large as Silicon Valley. If I go to Silicon Valley, do I see 10% black people?
God,
no. No.
That's right.
I gotta
Is
like
he right?
hunt. I gotta like pick
I
up
don't
a
know if
cover.
you have that
I gotta
much.
look underneath the rug.
I agree with
And in
that.
some of their reports, unfortunately, they're reporting on the bus driver. So we have to be talking
Are
about.
you really special out in Silicon Valley? You know,
Look,
What we call unicorns.
I have to give Google a shout out since they agreed to partner with Howard to set up a campus in Silicon Valley for Howard students.
Yeah.
But when we had these transformations, in 20 years, think of how important and big AT&T became after we figured out that you couldn't have individual telephone companies and we let them have a monopoly. But those companies, Ford Motor Company, poured tons of money into Tuskegee. The Rockefellers poured tons of money into Spelman. We don't see the endowing of the source of this innovation at the same rate for these new companies. If you look at the old line companies and what they did to make sure that this was going to be, and at a time it was not popular, right? I mean, the reason why they had to help out Spelman
this is
was
profound.
because
I mean,
people in Georgia
yeah.
didn't want black people educated.
Right.
But the Rockefellers wanted
Right.
black people educated. Ford wanted black people educated, so he put tons of money into Tuskegee personally.
So let me just grab you here. I mean, you're describing something so profoundly important, and huge historic trends. The tectonics of this are enormous. And with both of you gentlemen, what I really understand and feel is just how everything has become so much faster, so that the speed at which all this. And I'm just wondering, oftentimes. I was a specialist in developing economies. So like Karen over here, I was interested in development economics, but with other countries, and you would see other countries that were lagging behind Japan or lagging, way behind other developed, figure out a pattern to kind of strategically leap forward. I'm just interested, and we often go out and proselytize around the world and say, hey, you economies, are there things that we can do that would bridge the needs that I've heard very much from Algernon and Bill here, but taking, as you said at the very beginning, technology to kind of help strategically leap into something that's a healthier balance between labor, workers, talent, and technology than we have today? And I know you're going to say no.
No, I'm going to say I'm going to say yes with the caveat that
Wow.
it's a challenge, okay? Because it's a risky thing. If you look at blockchain, for example, which is a cutting-edge technology.
Can you do me, because I'm fascinated by blockchain and Bitcoin and the whole. And can you just give a 30-second primer to the audience, because I don't think a lot of people know what that is.
I'm not the best person to describe it, but essentially blockchain is a public ledger that is available. It's encrypted, but it's available for anyone to use. So
Some people consider it, if you didn't, as an alternative future internet. That
it is
in a way.
It's an infrastructure like the internet. You could say it's like the second generation of the internet. The internet provided information exchange around the world. This will allow value exchange. It'll allow for digital property. And it does that mostly through encryption. But it is a revolutionary technology and something that the African American community or any community should be involved in now, not waiting 15 or 20 years for it to be leveraged by other people who have more foresight. I mean, I would focus less on the battles of the past, and much more on the battles of the future. And blockchain is one of those battles.
So Daniel, you mentioned before, though, that you were envisioning a future where automation just takes all the jobs. And
well,
so
no, all rudimentary jobs. So jobs that are jobs.
Tasks.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
If your job is the same every day, and you don't have to add any value to that other than what you've learned in your training, that job will be automated.
But in that future, I'm just trying to understand the vision of that future. So of that future, are there lots of people who are not working? Is everyone just working 10 hours a day? How does it all look like?
Every society is going to adapt differently depending on their history, right? Northern Europe, Canada, they're trialing basic income, right? Everybody gets $10,000 to $20,000, and that's a very small amount of money to live on. But they get that as a base living amount, guaranteed income to survive on. I suspect by 2060, 2070, a vast majority of people will be living on some kind of basic income. The idea that we're all going to be entrepreneurs and inventors and build Silicon Valleys in every city, I think is utopian. Having said that, if we used our education, so I have a PhD in education policy, right? If we used our education system to deliver more entrepreneurs and innovators, instead of focusing so much on testing, as though testing is some kind of silver bullet, we would get a lot further, right?
Wilson?
I agree. I mean, I think Daniel basically is down. Our brains are tethered. Basically told him what to say.
Does Google favor a basic income plan?
There's politics with that, right? UBI is it's around the world. Different people see that differently.
Out in Silicon Valley, they've got a test, right? Y Combinator's doing a test of basic income with the community. How's it going? Or
that's so my personal view on this, and I've been doing a lot of thinking about this. I think rather than going down the pigeonhole of UBI, this universal basic income, stepping back a bit and thinking about what are we trying to solve. And what we're trying to solve is we need to have a social safety net. So that's the problem. UBI is one potential solution to that problem, but that's the problem. And if you focus on that problem, then we can get some of the brightest people going after finding solutions for that. And we need a plethora of potential solutions so we can see what works best in what societies. In the U.S., the capitalist kind of nature in the U.S. will probably not lend itself easily to something like a UBI, at least how our political system is today. So we may need to do something in the U.S., and this is just me thinking out loud, something around universal basic dividends, where when we have these big IPOs and there's all this capital that's unleashed, the people share in that, right? Because they've also invested in these companies that have gone well. So it's not a, and I'm putting this in quotes, like a handout. It's a return on the investment that we as society has made in this innovation. And that's just one example of really thinking very critically about the solutions that solve this social safety net problem.
Let me go out to my other panel member, Karen. Do you have a microphone over there? Karen, have a microphone? Here we go. Karen, let me ask you. Here we go. Everyone, this is Karen.
Hi, Karen.
Yeah. Oh, no, you. Oh, you're going to defer to your colleague. Oh, God, geez, so I don't know if I can let you do that. What's your name?
My name's Alexandra Bastian.
Alexandra, nice to see you. And are you allowed to say where you work? Because she wasn't.
I work at PolicyLink.
Okay, good. Nice to have you. And Karen, that was very sneaky. But I wanted to just kind of put on the table. We're having a discussion here about really what is healthy economics. And as you look into the future, as you kind of get a healthy economic equation down the future, my sense is that you're a cool table thinking about these issues. What haven't you heard up here that you think you need to hear in the economic development arena that we ought to be adding to the discussion?
I do think that I do think that the conversation is about some kind of basic income, and it might take this country a long time to admit it. And we'll have a lot of capitalists who try to change the name of it to other things, but that's what's going to end up, if they want to have an economic base from which to make money, people need to have some kind of income. So I think that it's been talked about, but probably not at the level that, you know,
I mean, I hate to say it, but isn't a surf economy also sort of a basic income economy? I mean, it's not attractive at all. I mean, I'm just wondering the basic income. What worries me when I hear this are people acquiescing and say, you know, I worry it doesn't change the power equation. It keeps a lot of people basically suppressed potentially.
Yeah.
I just don't know why there's so much enthusiasm, and I'm just challenging folks to, you know, talk me down
Let me
if I'm
respond
wrong.
to that. I mean, we're talking about basic income as a basic basis,
Right.
It could grow over time if there are dividends that come out of it. If people get a basic income, there was an experiment in Canada, right, something like 25 years ago. If people then invest that money in education or into stocks or into their families,
Right.
into child rearing and all sorts of things, you see a kind of benefit that trickulates through the whole society. And it seems to me that that's something we need to do experiments on to figure out, rather than to dismiss it out of hand or to engage it as if it's a final solution. We don't know either.
Right.
That's the reality.
And did you want to add something to that?
I think the only other piece that probably hasn't been talked about together in this conversation is that I'm thinking about the connection between the reparations that I think need to happen
Right.
in order for people of color to be able to fully participate and innovate at the level that will be needed, and how we connect that to the future of our economy. So that's probably the one piece where I'm wondering how we kind of pay for the harm that has been done and reconcile that in order for everyone to be at the table, as you mentioned earlier, at the table in an equitable way.
That's right.
Right.
To contribute to the conversation
Really
about the
interesting
future.
comment. Bill, any thoughts on this?
Well, it isn't that we don't have innovators in the black community. We don't have the capital in the black community to exploit the innovation. So the reason we're not Silicon Valley is because the ability of African Americans to access capital on the scale that's necessary doesn't exist. And we don't have a democratization for it, and we don't have the reparations to have addressed it. But I want to get back to the basic income. A level of inequality as we currently have is already unsustainable, because when the bulk of the income was in the middle class, market-driven forces say, I will produce a product there because that's where the money is. So if I'm going to build a home, it's for the middle class because they have the bulk of the money to buy homes. When I want to think about what is college going to cost, it has to be affordable to them because they're the ones with the money. Now, we don't live in that society anymore. The bulk of the money is at the high end. So if I'm going to build a home, I'm not building it for the bottom 80%. They don't have the money. That's how markets work.
Right.
I chase money. I don't chase people. Everyone needs a home. But if you don't have money, I don't care in the marketplace. I want to go where the money is. So we're going to get the continued skew in housing prices, because if I'm building a home, it's for the people with the money. If I'm going to run a college, the way that we have set up college to be market driven, I want the people with the money. That's why you see so many colleges with more students in the 1% than the bottom 40%. I need the people with the money. If I'm going to have anything else, it's going to continue to be skewed in that way. So you can't do this through basic income, because if 99% of the people only have 8% of the money, there's no market. There's no market. The only thing I have to do is figure out, how do I make Kim Kardashian happy? and so that's not a marketplace for robots.
Right.
I don't need robots for one person. All I need to do is find her a puppy.
So let me ask all four of you for a minute. Very bleak picture. I thought it was harder for anyone to be darker and cynical than myself.
You met your match.
You know, we were asking, he was supposed to be the, I tell everybody I'm the most cynical guy, but you definitely win. But I want to ask this question, because a lot of the discussion about these economic forums is, what can we do? I'm just going to set aside your bleak picture. I can't even operate with this, but what can we do to train students differently? What can we do to equip people, I guess, to compete in the world you just so darkly described, to kind of get back where we've got more stakeholding, and then the masters of the universe over here, the Bezoses at Amazon, and the Sergey Brin, who's apparently building this massive spaceship. Don't know what's going on there. Your co-founder. Did you see that news? Is that? Yeah, he's got a big spaceship that he's building somewhere. Howard Hughes guy. But I mean, how do you connect what we're just hearing about, the need for people to kind of navigate, to have this? What are the best lessons that we have on hand for folks that may not have naturally found themselves into the Singularity University, but so that those pathways are open to many, 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 many more people on a more egalitarian basis, and you get back to a more, you're not going to get to a perfectly fair society, but a more fair and more healthy, more sustainable economy. What are the things, when it comes to technology and education, of getting it right as opposed to just displacement?
Well, I have one response to that. Look at the education bubble, right? $1.4 trillion in debt for students, all right? It's a disaster on every level. College should probably be free, just like high school was in its day. We're probably going to have to move to transform the way we think about mediating people
who are
from...
the enemies of that proposal?
I don't know if there are specific communities, like obviously people that have businesses that support, private education, for example.
People who don't want to pay taxes are the enemies of that.
I see. Good
that's why
that's
the cost
That's
of...
a tweetable moment.
But what I think it just has to be digested in the public consciousness.
So you would support something along what President Obama said, some degree of free access, free college?
Because high school doesn't represent what it used to.
Is that fake? You put everybody through that, but at the end of the day, you end up with the same distribution, the same number of people left behind.
If you think that we're going to go through college and just get a job at the end working in a mill, maybe we're working in some lab that does 3D printing in innovative ways, maybe. But I think the point of it is that we should be shifting our thinking around college and university education toward entrepreneurship and innovation anyway. Because that's what's going on.
Wilson? And I want to connect that point to Wilson's point about a safety net, because I think one thing that we haven't realized in the American economy is that when you have a stronger safety net, that makes it easier for people to be entrepreneurs, right? If I can leave my job, start a business, but don't have to worry about whether I have health insurance, then that's much easier for me to do. So when we have a stronger safety net, people it's easier for them to take risks because they know that they're not going to completely crash and burn if the business doesn't work out. So we have to get that mindset into the sort of pro-business, pro-entrepreneurship community, that a safety net actually helps entrepreneurship. It doesn't take away from entrepreneurship.
Wilson?
I want to echo the point about education, but also I want to just as a caveat all of this in saying I don't think there's a silver bullet solution. And it's good that we're having this kind of ideation around this. In the US and basically around the world, we've kind of locked people into this like 4-year college thing as a credential to do X. And the data is just not bearing out for that to be true. So I think just rethinking that makes sense. But I think technology could potentially play a role in this. Imagine a world where machines who can crunch large amounts of data and do analysis pretty quickly understands what the labor dynamics are. Like, where are the jobs being created where we need to fill gaps? The machines understand that because they can very quickly do that analysis and in real time update the way we are educating our people so that they're prepared with the skills for where those jobs are. You can imagine technology playing a role in helping that kind of adaptive education.
I think we need to shift our mindset. And I met with the head of AT&T's continuing education recently and interviewed him. And they've got 280,000 people. They've got, they're really adapting, continual, lifelong, ongoing education. They try and hire from within for more than, they hire from within from 40% of their jobs. They have Sebastian Thrun at Udacity that's created the nano degree sort of pathways, very inexpensive pathways for people to come in at a very basic level. And it seems to me really cool. But when you look at a broader society, I think there's a stigma attached to ongoing education. I think there's a thing that if you have to go on and go back to school, somehow there's something wrong with you. Even though the data show that at most universities, even liberal arts schools or colleges, your non-traditional student is more traditional than the traditional students are. They're more than the majority now. So what you're saying is happening, but there seems to be, I think, a lack of social consciousness in my view about that. Do you agree?
I agree with that, and I think that's where I think, Daniel, you started this. That's where the political and policy frameworks need to come into play. Like, it needs to be a societal decision, and that's how we're going to.
So you're the political and policy guy. Who's good at this on the Hill, and who's crappy? Actually, who are your favorite 3 and your worst 3?
I have to say my favorite one is Representative Elijah Cummings because
Pandering. Total pandering.
He had the good sense to.
I know he's had a good day.
So he's starting from a good place.
He's had a really good day. I told my team when I was coming over, and they said he's a really good day. And I said he's stealing the thunder of this great panel.
Here's my concern though with that question. I really think this discussion that we're having here isn't really happening in a constructive way on the Hill, in Brussels, in Seoul, South Korea.
You could have a big Google platform and invite these guys up there and you could fix this.
Right? But what really is, I think you mentioned earlier, Algernon, or maybe Bill, you mentioned this, the money in politics. I think that there's a direct correlation between money in politics and the ridiculous polarization that we have in our politics now. And so that every issue, you have to look at what camp the person is in who's taking a position on that issue. And if they're taking a position on that issue, you have to take the opposite position. And so we can't really have a constructive debate about issues with substantial importance for society, like this issue. And I think we have to break that polarization and for us to really have a constructive conversation.
I was going to say there are 2 current things wrong with that. I mean, a large part of this is business. The IT industry so often will say to experienced computer programmers, oh, you're old, you need to be put on the farm. And yet, these are people who are highly skilled and trained for lifelong learning, but that industry, which is supposed to believe in such a thing, tells them, you're too old. At many of these companies, if you show me somebody over 55, you got to celebrate, because you reach that age and then they think you're a dinosaur. So that's part, the new companies will often even post for something that's totally brand new and say, we want somebody with 8 years experience doing it. It's like, you just started this 1 year ago. Where are the 8-year experienced people? So there's this huge tendency to say they don't know the flavor of the day, not even week. When you look to the old line companies that were making investments in people and saying that, oh, well, you know what? If you work for IBM, you believe in lifelong learning because at IBM, every 4 weeks, you had to go to training somewhere. So it's not that people are reticent or think, oh, lifelong learning is a bad thing. That's how we used to do things because we believed in keeping the people and making the investment. That's not taking place. But more importantly than that, if we reduce education to what is profitable for business, we get what we currently have.
Right.
Because we don't have the people who say, who said this system made sense? So I don't want an education system that only serves what's profitable. I want an education system that looks at these solutions. At Howard University, we will never get a dime from anybody for our law school having single-handedly dismantling American apartheid. Every major civil rights case was either argued, won, created, thought of by a Howard faculty member, a Howard student, or a Howard alum. We don't get a penny for that. We don't get a dime for that. It was not marketable. The marketplace wasn't saying we demand equality for black people. So I don't want an education system or a college that is only driven with what's going to make Google money. I want an education system that can produce the people who say, if workers don't get paid, if we don't have equal justice, if we don't have a more just society, none of this is going to happen.
That's right.
Thank you. We're right here, but I want to just discipline you guys for a minute. 20 seconds each. I'd like to hear, I mean, I know this is sort of a silly question, but I do think it helps discipline and focus the mind. You can't, it's a very big issue, but if you were to shift one element, one needle that you think would get us into a healthier place in dealing with this question of the future of work, the future of the workforce, whether it's basic income, whatever, what's the needle you think is the one that you would push? Algernon?
I might be stealing Bill's comment, but I think we need to make it much easier for workers to organize. Because the technology, we were talking about who's creating the technology and who it's serving. In the workplace, it's not serving the workers. It's not for the average workers. And once you address that imbalance in our political system, and as well as in our workplace, then I think we can move towards better policies.
Bill?
So since he stole my thunder, I steal his thunder, which is we have to get money out of politics so that we can elect politicians who are free to serve the people and figure out how do we have an economy that works for the people. Then all of this is possible.
That's a big one. Thank you. Daniel?
It's hard to pick one, but I guess just what I think now is something along the lines of reframing the education system so there's more focus on entrepreneurship and I think forecasting so people can see the future instead of being focused on the present so much. And some kind of emphasis on getting away from testing and focusing on innovation.
Thank you. Wilson?
I'm going to steal Bill's thunder since we're stealing, we're in the process of stealing right now.
I don't know. You're the intellectual property guys, so
I think
didn't realize how casual you were with people stealing.
I think what Bill said about what came out of Howard, the dismantling of American apartheid, as you put it. I think people of color need to recognize that this issue that we've been debating is a serious threat to our sustainability in this country and countries around the world. And we need to have the same type of thought leadership and urgency that went around thinking about all the areas that were broken in American apartheid and really getting about the business of dismantling these things that have kept us behind.
Karen's designee, what's your name again? Alexandra, what needle would you push?
Money in politics.
Money in politics, okay. Trinae? I want to be fair to my fellow panelists here.
Bill, where I believe very strongly that the incentive structure right now has never rewarded hiring and serving folks who have been historically disenfranchised. So if we can use this opportunity, to Daniel's point, that right now we have an opportunity to reimagine education, to reimagine social supports, everything that we've done up to this point, and the systems that we have in place right now are remnants of needs that we had decades and decades ago. So if we can look forward and create incentive structures and disrupt current incentive structures in ways that have more of an equity lens and think more about all the things that we've gotten wrong, I think we might be able to get somewhere and create ways for folks to find value in serving folks who traditionally have not had the focus put on them.
I really appreciate that. We're right there. We're going to go to all of you to have questions. I'd just say, in conclusion, that one of the things that I worry about, I look at technology, I look at the kinds of things I'm very worried about disparities getting worse and worse and worse, because that is what technology does. Technology highlights, exacerbates things that are already there and in place and obvious. And so there are market failures in this equation that have to be addressed. And one way to do it is try to elevate the skill sets of everyone. But then what I worry about is what I learned about this AI front are the incumbent biases, the racism, the ways in which we've organized society already continue to have echo effects in the internet of everything that's coming down the road. That's the scariest thing to me, is that we have a lot of talks like this, but we could very much easily fall into the trap where we actually just create recurring patterns. And I think we ought to be blowing the whistle on that to some degree. So, but I want to thank you, because I do think that what you just raised and Bill just raised, all of you raised, was very important. I was going to spend the moment, kind of asking you all to grade my panelists and who you like the best, but I won't do that. But let me go to all of you and then take some questions from there. And I guess we've got someone who's going to run around the mic, right? Hi, how are you? Tell us your name. You've got a great voice if you're not.
I wasn't.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah.
So a lot of this panel was focused on how work itself will change over the next, 50 years. What about the workplace?
Right.
A lot of the work that we're doing is thinking about how employers play a role in building the financial health of their employees. And just kind of over time, there's been I think, a shift in the amount of responsibility that workplaces take for that economic development. So just kind of curious your thoughts on how this futuristic workplace will...
And let me just ask very short form. So I'm going to go, Daniel, you.
I guess to echo my earlier pessimism, I think that the corporate structure will probably flatten quite a bit as you see like blockchain smart contracts emerge, Upwork, platforms like that, contract workers, more and more contract workers. I think that people will become more autonomous. We could use unions for contract workers to, as leverage. But I think the idea of a multinational, centralized, vertically integrated, I think that's probably going to get undermined by technology.
Other quick comments on this one?
I would say there's another aspect. I mean, in the future of work discussion, people focus on either the elimination of jobs or things basically staying the same. But technology also impacts a job quality, the nature of work. So we can think of work scheduling software where people are, just-in-time scheduling, where people don't know what their schedule is from week to week, maybe from day to day. So there are ways in which the technology is eroding job quality that's making it more difficult